Okay, welcome to the WTF Divorce podcast. Today we are lucky to be joined by Gabrielle Stone. Gabrielle is the author of the book. This could be my favorite title of all time, Eat, Pray, FML. Thanks for being here today, Gabrielle.
Thank you for having me. I love the title of the podcast, so I feel right at home.
I can only relate to like people that keep it real, and I think we're going to talk about your book, but I imagine the title was like really helped spike the popularity of the book because people could relate to that idea of FML.
Yeah, it definitely, my story and my journey is not Eat, Pray, Love, and FML fit much more appropriately in describing what was going on in my life.
Well, let's get into it. Our audience is people that are thinking about divorce, going through divorce, or life after divorce, which is really what I want to talk to you about. But let's tell people that aren't familiar with your book and your story a little bit about Eat, Pray, FML.
Yeah, so the book kind of happened to me. I was married for almost 2 years and found out my husband was having an affair with a 19-year-old for 6 months, among a lot of other extramarital affairs that came to light during my investigative process. And I filed for divorce and left. Shortly after that, I met a guy and we fell madly in love with each other and had this like whirlwind romance that was like, meet my family. I'm going to have babies with this person. Like, we're done. And he invited me on a month-long trip to Italy. 48 hours before we were getting on the plane, he told me he needed to go by himself and broke up with me. And I was absolutely devastated. Like, this man broke my heart like my ex-husband never could have done. But in that moment, I had a decision to make, and that was either stay at home heartbroken or go travel Europe for a month by myself. So I took my backpack and I did 6 countries over the span of the month, and I wrote the book Eat, Pray, FML.
Well, he said he needed to go on this journey himself also. Was he on the same plane as you? What happened
Oh,
there?
yeah. Yeah, we sat right next to each other on the nice long 11-hour flight. And then he went on to Rome where we were supposed to start our trip. And I started my trip in London.
Wow. So talk about that like moment. Obviously, you're heartbroken. Your entire brain has got to be completely discombobulated. What prompts you to not just like wallow in it and bury yourself in those feelings and say, "Fuck it, I'm going."
I'm a big believer in everything happens for a reason, but not in like the toxic positivity. Everything happens for a reason. Just like get over it. It'll be fine. But like I can look back at the deaths that I've experienced in my life, the traumas that I've had in my life, and I can say, okay, as shitty as this was, I can see how this experience made me the person I am today, or why this needed to happen, or look at like the good things that came from those dark times. Usually it takes a little bit of perspective until we can realize that. But in this specific instance, I knew exactly why it was happening since I was a little girl. When I lost my father at the age of 6, I have had a fear of abandonment, and that manifested in my life of never wanting to be alone. So I always had a man in my life, or had a roommate, or had friends over. Like, I was never okay by myself. And this was the universe's way of making me go face that shit head on. And I knew that I had to take the trip. I knew that whatever the trip was going to bring and teach me was going to be life changing. And I knew that if I could then translate that into a book and convey this journey that I had been on, it would probably help a lot of other people heal.
So I like how you said everything happens for a reason, but not in the woo woo roll your eyes that way. When you're going through it, and this is something I struggle with, and I think a lot of our audience, we talk to a lot of people that have some distance from divorce. What is it like though when you're actually going through it? I mean, that's the disconnect that I think a lot of people have, that like everything happens for a reason. I should be over this. Are you still like sitting in the shit when you're, making that flight and making these decisions?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was sitting in the shit for a very, very long time. And I think that that's such an important piece of anyone's healing journey is you have to allow yourself to meet yourself where you are every single day. Some days that's going to be crying and eating ice cream and drinking wine and not knowing what's coming next. And sometimes that'll be going out and exploring a new city and, meeting new people and really like getting out of your shell. But it's important to honor yourself where you are every day. I think my divorce was interesting and different because by the time we got to that place in our marriage, I was so unhappy. I didn't understand why. We had been doing the therapy. I had been like putting in the work. I didn't understand why I was so unhappy, but I wasn't in love with the person that I was in a marriage with anymore. And so when the affair came to light, instead of being heartbroken, it was more betrayal and rage and anger that I had to deal with and kind of unpack. The heartbreak came after. So I had all of the elements. It was just from two different men. But it really was like my rock bottom. And the trip that came after that allowed me to start to rediscover myself in a completely new way. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about solo travel is that you're really forced out of your comfort zone. You're forced to just be with yourself, not be scrolling on your phone while watching Netflix and having all this like extra outside stimulation going on. You really just have to be with you. And so often we aren't doing that in our lives.
Going back a little bit to the divorce, it sounds like you had, and I hear this a lot about the difference between men and women and how they deal with divorce. Women have usually thought about it years before. Men, we tend not to. And the specific instance of cheating, we hear that's a really common thing in divorce. Any advice, personal, just the way you handled it for people that are, confronted with cheating that leads to divorce? What was that like?
Yeah, we talk a lot about cheating and the fallout of it on my podcast, FML Talk. And the thing that I always try and remind people that have gone through any type of cheating is it's not about you. As personal as it feels, it has nothing to do with you. Beyonce was cheated on. Jennifer Lopez was cheated on. The most influential, powerful, stunningly beautiful women on our planet have been cheated on. When someone decides to cheat, it's because they are looking for an ego boost or they are looking to fill a void within themselves. And you're not going to fill that void, nor is the person they're cheating with. No one will fill that void until that person decides to fill it within themselves and heal. It is because they are broken and they are looking to fix something with outside validation. So the first thing I remind people is that it has nothing to do with you. So as personal as it feels, don't take it like, oh, I should have done this more. Oh, I could have done this. Like it was going to happen regardless. If a person's going to decide to cheat, they're going to decide to cheat. It makes them a shitty person, not you. And are there, special circumstances where it was a one-time thing and it leads to a bunch of healing for the couple and they work through it? Sure. I do think those are very small percentages and take very incredible people who both want to make changes in the relationship. But for the majority, I remind people that it has nothing to do with you. And I can promise you that it is a blessing in disguise. And you have to remember, thank God this person showed me their true characters now instead of how many more years of my life down the road.
And so it sounds like pretty quickly got into a new relationship or, fell in love quickly thereafter. I think we all, after divorce and these incidents, we don't really feel comfortable alone. So we do throw ourselves into relationships. I think men are actually probably as guilty or more guilty of that than anybody. What were your thoughts of I need to get in something now. I don't want to be alone. And how did you reconcile that with then, going on that trip? How did that change things?
I wish that the guy after would have been more of a rebound. It would have made my life a lot easier. But I left my house after handing over divorce papers being I'm going to be by myself for at least a year. I'm going to focus on me. And the universe was like, fat fucking chance, Gabrielle. Here you go. I was oddly okay after my divorce. I had been unhappy for 6 to 7 months. So mentally, I had been pretty checked out for a while. I had then also found out about the cheating a month before I was actually able to hand him the papers. So I knew I was out of this quite some time before I actually physically left the house. And then this new man who's in the book, his name is Javier, came into my life 2 weeks after I had left my house. So it seems fast, but like mentally, I had been like very done with the marriage for quite some time. That being said, I would have not jumped headfirst into a relationship if I would have been super broken after the divorce. Like I knew driving away from that house, I was like, I did not just dodge a bullet. I just dodged an army of fucking snipers. And like, thank God he gave me an out like this early on. So I was oddly okay. My friends and family were like, why are you so okay? That being said, I know from people who read my book and DM me, it's always the person after the big breakup or the divorce that like, you know, you can be with someone for 5-10 years, but it's the person after that you had this hot and heavy thing with for a few months that really fucking wrecks you. And I don't have an answer as to like why that's the case, but I do know that it is the case. And I think, you know, when people get out of a divorce, especially if they've been cheated on, like, or any relationship, they have this instinct to like protect themselves. Like they want to put this wall up around their heart. And it's like, how am I ever going to trust again? And while I understand where all those feelings come from, I always try and encourage people to not do that. If I ever had a time in my life where I would have been warranted to do that, it would have been after finding out that my ex-husband was having an affair. And if I would have done that, I would have never met Javier, wouldn't have fallen in love, wouldn't have gotten my heart broken, which I can assure you was the first time that had really happened in my life, wouldn't have gone on this incredible soul-searching trip, wouldn't have written this book that completely changed my life and my career. I came back from that trip a different woman, and it's totally changed my life and put me on the path that I was supposed to be on. So I always remind people, keep your heart open, fall in love, take the chance, get into the relationship. Obviously, don't like cover your eyes and walk through like a carnival of red flags saying, no, it's fine. He's totally a good guy if he's so clearly not. But like, take the chance. You're either going to end up wildly happy and in love or heartbroken, but that heartbreak is going to teach you so many lessons and make you into the person, the version of yourself that you're supposed to be, that then will attract someone who's worthy of being with you. So either of those outcomes are well worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, you hear so many people say, especially after divorce, take time on your own. Don't date right away. I think men aren't as good at that. We kind of throw ourselves right on the apps and we're looking for the validation. And then, do you think you can, like work on yourself, take time on your own while you're out there dating and meeting people?
I think you can, as long as you're honest with the people that you're getting involved with. Like, don't be that asshole that's like, I'm going to get on an app and like start talking to this person and not be upfront that I'm like not looking for a relationship, or that I'm going to like get into a couple months with this person and then be like, actually, I just realized how fucked up I am. I'm not ready. Like, don't be that person. So I would say if you're going to do that, be transparent. But no one has ever been like, fuck, I wish I wouldn't have taken more time to like work on myself and be with myself. So that's always a good starting point if you're coming off of a breakup.
Right. I also find that you can do a lot of work on yourself on your own and hide out, but you're really, the rubber meets the road when you get into a relationship. That's when you're going to see your triggers, you're going to see their flags. So it is, I think that a lot of people think that they can just, I'm going to take 2 years on my own, then I'm going to meet somebody and it's all going to work out. But that practice of dating and being in a relationship is so valuable that you just can't fully replace on your own.
Totally. And being open and communicating, like when we attract relationships into our lives to be mirrors to the shit that we need to work on. And you can either be like, well, this is fucked. I don't want to like look at any of my own shit. I'm going to break up with this person and go this way. Or you can say, why did I attract this person into my life and what's it bringing up in me and how can I communicate with them to work through some of these triggers?
So you take this trip on your own. Obviously the circumstances were not ideal. You didn't plan it, but what would you say to people out there, especially after divorce, that might encourage them to go off on their own, to travel on their own? Maybe some tips on what, a trip like that would look like.
Oh my God. If anyone ever has the chance or the means or the opportunity to go solo travel, please go do it. It's terrifying, and I never thought I would be one to go do it. My second book, which is the sequel to Eat, Pray, FML, called The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl, I take my second solo trip to Southeast Asia, and that one was by choice. So I can confirm that it is not only life-changing, but it is so fun and so amazing. I think for me, the biggest gift the solo trips gave me was how capable I am on my own and how okay I am on my own, and that I actually like being on my own and having that time with myself. And also, I mentioned, from the deaths I've experienced in my life, that I've always had this big fear of abandonment, and the solo travel really instilled in me I'm never truly abandoned because I will never abandon myself. And that was such a big realization for me to have, and a safety net for me to hold on to in my life. It's just going to get you out of your comfort zone. It's going to help you rediscover so many amazing things about yourself. And if you do choose to do that, don't overplan. Because like I am a type A planner to a T, but because I was forced to go on this journey with zero plans and had no time to make them, I was like in one city and then I would book my ticket to the next city. And it allowed me to meet people and have them invite me places and like not know what was coming next. And there was a freedom in that that was really, really powerful.
Where do you think you got this badassery? Where does this come from? That you finally got to like flex this muscle?
I want to say I've always been a badass, but I think definitely watching my mom growing up. When my dad passed away, I was at my house with him and my nanny, and she was across the world shooting a film. She got on the next plane home, flew back, spent a week at home with me, did his celebration of life, got all their affairs in order, put me and my nanny back on a plane with her, flew all the way back to New Zealand and finished the film. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is like how you act when trauma erupts into your life. Got it. Like we're tough shit. And I think ever since then, it's just kind of been how we are.
And you were how old when that happened?
I was 6 and almost 7.
Wow. And do you remember it differently? Do you obviously remember it when you're that age? Can you like take all that in, or is this a lot of like hindsight of looking back?
I think a little of both. I have flashes of it. I went in to wake him up to watch cartoons, and I walked in and he wasn't in his bedroom, went into the bathroom and saw him lying on the floor. And as a 6-year-old, you're like, oh, daddy passed out. Like you don't assume someone has died. And I ran out to tell my nanny, and I have a very clear flash memory of her racing past me to go into the bedroom. But the things that happened after that are filled in more from like my mom and her telling me kind of what took place. And I'm not still till this day, not sure if that's because I was 6 years old and, you have a spotty memory, or if my little brain was like, nope, we're not going to do this. And just kind of like was the first time that I disassociated, which is entirely possible too.
Well, it's amazing. And I know you have a podcast that your mom was recently a guest on. You guys talk a lot on the show.
Yeah, I've brought her on a couple times. Apart from being an actress, she's a worldwide healer and just has such incredible wisdom to offer. Although my listeners also love when we get on and just like shoot the shit as mother-daughter. But I usually bring her on for her expertise and her healing work.
Well, Gabrielle, I pulled our audience and I said, what are your top divorce books that you recommend? And your book was the one that came up the most. We got a lot of messages of people saying, their questions. And, we had actually somebody say, tell her that FML gave me what I needed to confront the truth in my marriage.
I love that so much. I read every DM that I get that's related to this book because I know that it's such a personal journey that they take with me when they read it. So to hear that people have gotten so much healing and strength from it is really, it makes it all worth it. I would do it all 10 times over to end up where I'm at now.
And personally, what I take from your story too is that despite all this stuff happening to you, you were, and I like what you said before, you were not afraid to get into another relationship, to fall in love again, to get your heart broken again, if that's what happened. That's something that's so hard once we are scarred from a past relationship. So that's a great message to see, you putting out into the world. And now you're in a relationship now. Tell people about what's going on now with you.
I am very happily married, and we have a baby that's due in a couple months, hence my very swollen face as I'm looking at myself on the screen. And the relationship that I'm in now is so stable and so healthy and so different from anything I've been in the past. And people can read about that crazy journey in the sequel. But it really is a testament of taking accountability as to why I was attracting certain people into my life. Like, I get so many DMs of, oh, I can't stop getting cheated on, or I keep dating these assholes. And it's like, okay, you don't deserve any of that. But if there's a pattern and you've attracted more than one of those types into your life, there's something within you that is attracting those types of people. So for me, I had this big fear of abandonment, and it was, losing my dad. And then I also lost my high school sweetheart in a car accident when I was 18. And so it was this constant fear of abandonment, which was at the root. When I love someone, they leave me. So I subconsciously, to play out this belief that I was carrying, attracted my ex-husband, who abandoned me in like the most heinous way possible. And the universe was like, all right, Gabrielle, are we ready to go heal this shit? And I was like, no, I'm good. I'm going to go over here. Hey, here. Attracted him into my life, who quite literally abandoned me 2 days before we were getting on a plane. So it wasn't until I went on that solo trip and decided to go heal that abandonment that had been with me for so long that I was then able to attract the type of people who would never abandon me. And I was able to attract the relationship that I'm in now, that's so healthy and so stable and safe. And so I really urge people, when there's a pattern in your life, not saying you deserve any of the shit that's happening to you, but you have to take accountability and say, what in me is unhealed that is attracting these things to like teach me these lessons?
What was the difference when you met your current husband? Like, could you tell right away that things were different? Like, obviously the serendipity of meeting people is so random, but it seemed like something was different about the setup of you two.
Yeah, I mean, I knew he's just such a different human in so many different ways. And the pace of things, both of my other exes from Eat, Pray, FML, it was like, I love you. Let's get into a relationship. Let's like go hot and heavy and do everything really fast. And with my current husband, we were friends for like 2 months before we ever like crossed any lines and really built that foundation. Also because he came into my life when I was super fucked up. Like, I was like, I'm not trying to date anybody. Like, I'm a mess. I'm still in love with this asshole that broke my heart. Like, it was not the time for me. And he was just really patient. I think when people go back to read the books and discover them now, they obviously can see on my Instagram that I'm married and I'm having a baby and I'm so happy. But like, the journey it took for us to get there, like they'll read the second book and they're like, oh, I had no idea. I thought it was just going to be happily ever after, but this was like a freaking whirlwind. And I'm like, yeah, such is life, like you have to like really do the work on yourself, whether that's in a relationship or out of a relationship. Like, you really have to take that responsibility to get to the place of being able to show up and be in a healthy relationship.
It's the gift of divorce and all these shattered relationships. You get these lessons that a lot of people never get in their lives.
Amen. Like, so many big, big ones. And like, allow that to be, a badge of honor. Like, I am proud to be divorced. I'm proud that I walked away from an unhealthy relationship and got out of that when I did. Don't let society, who says like, oh, you're divorced and like it must be so embarrassing and shameful, like that's all a fucked up narrative that like our world has created. Take your power back in the sense of like, no, I did this to like stand up for myself and know my worth and go find something that I really deserve, because life is too fucking long and too fucking short to not be in a relationship that's happy and healthy and like lifting you up in all the ways.
That's a great place to end on. Gabrielle, tell people where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Gabrielle Stone and TikTok at Gabrielle_Stone. The books are available exclusively on Amazon. Eat, Pray, FML is the first one, and the sequel is The Ridiculous Misadventures of a Single Girl. You can also get both of those signed by me on my website, which is eatprayfml.com, where we also have all the podcast merch and my self-love healing journal called Fuck Off, I'm Healing. And cast airs every Wednesday called FML Talk.
Thank you, Gabrielle, for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.